What has it been like writing about and trying to expose some of the abuses in the royal history, Mountbatten, Prince Andrew? What's the reaction been to you?
Well, it's two stages really. First of all, the problem of getting access to the material. Royal files are generally closed. For example, I'm doing Prince Andrew at the moment. Those files will be closed until 2065, 105 years after his birth, so he'll be dead, as will I. But and when you do find things, as I did, for example, find the FBI file on Mountbatten for my book on him, saying that he had a predilection for pedophilia, the files were destroyed. And when I asked when they'd been destroyed, I was told after I'd asked for them. So there's a sort of hoovering up process that goes on even when things begin to emerge. And again, with Mountbatten, we know that car logs were kept at Classieborn, where he some boys in August 1977 who I interviewed for the book. We know that those car logs still exist, but the Garda are refusing to release them on the grounds that they're part of a murder investigation. But the murder took place 2 years later, and someone has gone to prison. He's actually come out of prison, and to be honest, they shut down the whole story because of the Good Friday Agreement. So we have this the whole time. The Concora boys' home, which is where one of the boys was from. Again, the files there have been heavily weeded, what we call dry cleaned. And though they've eventually found their way, because of campaigns by various people, including Chris Moore, who's a journalist in Ireland, to release them, there's nothing in them. And what's also very clear is when they do have hearings, they're very prescribed terms, and they select very tame judges. I mean, that's there in the correspondence. So the reaction is generally either to say nothing and hope the problem goes away, or to try and discredit the messenger, like me, to say that they're not serious historians, there's nothing new in this, etc. So there is, and they use the tame historians who rely on basically being given the titbits. So it's a sort of carrot and stick policy. If you go along with us, we'll make life easy. We'll put you on quangos. If you make life difficult, we can make life difficult for you. So as you know, I think I've talked in the past about the close to £500,000 it cost me in a legal case to get access to Mountbatten's diaries and letters. And this wasn't a case I brought. This was a case that was brought against me, an appeal against the Information Commissioner, who is the regulator to which I was joined. And we know that they brought that case knowing that the material should have been open. It was bought with public monies. All the fundraising was on the basis it would be open. And one of the ironies is they released all the material that they'd fought to keep closed for 10 years just before the hearing. So in the end, the hearing was just about a few exemptions. So they can make life difficult. I mean, I've put in some subject access requests, which you can do now under data protection, to see what public authorities have on you, the correspondence. And that the Cabinet Office said that they had so much material that they were refusing to release it because of the cost compliance element. So I then narrowed the research, as it would take 965 hours, I think, to go through it. So I restricted it to 6-month periods. And even then, that released about 100 pages showing that they were monitoring the most obscure book talks that I gave, an employment tribunal former employee had brought, a defamation case against me, both of which I'd won, applications for jobs in government, public appointments were shared with the Cabinet Office. So it's kind of sinister. And again, there's a lot of briefing to the press. Complete lies are told about something. And for example, David Owen, the former private foreign secretary, was a supporter of mine. And he was just fed a tissue of lies by the Cabinet Office about the case. And they lied to Parliament, they lied to the courts, and they've lied to the media.
What does it feel like to be sort of public enemy number one? Would you say you are a heretic in this sense, as a publisher and a writer and historian going against the grain? Well,
I mean, principally as a writer, yes. Yes, I mean, and I think they don't like it because it's not as if I'm a madman. I have a PhD, former Cambridge Fellow. You can hear I seem reasonably sensible. I put footnotes in. And so it's much more difficult to do that. Also, my books have had good critical coverage in the past as serious books with serious research. So it's more difficult to try and discredit me. But so, I mean, I'm not certainly public enemy number one. In some ways, it makes me want to go on further, because I think, why should they get away with this? And I think also it's about the relationship between the governed and the government. And if the civil service or politicians can't be trusted and aren't transparent, then that goes to the very heart of the relationship of being in a democracy. I mean, this is the behavior of Russia and China, the way that they curate the narrative, they destroy records. Something like 95% of historical records are destroyed with no record kept.
Who is responsible for this? Because it does sound like the Stasi or something, doesn't it? And who's the person at the top going, right, destroy those records?
Well, I don't think there's one person who's masterminding it. There's something called the Knowledge Management Department, which is the sort of records management element of the Cabinet Office. And they seem to be one of the prime movers in this. I mean, the irony is that they're in charge of information regulation. They employ the regulator, which is why the regulator perhaps pulls his punches a bit, because what the Cabinet Office have done is they've basically halved the money given to the information regulator as their workload has doubled. So that helps cut down anything. The Cabinet Office are one of the worst offenders of FOI infringement. And because
so freedom of information, just for those, it's the same in the US, is it?
Yes, it is. Sorry, yes, I'm using freedom of information. And, there are laws. There's Freedom of Information Act. I mean, there are laws. And there's a Public Record Act saying this material should be released. So I think they're one of the prime movers. And some records management elements of government departments are good. I mean, for example, MI5 have a regular release program, and there's some very interesting stuff coming out. A lot of SOE files, Special Operations Executive from World War II are coming out, and it's leading to reassessments of our history, to books, and really pushing forward scholarship. I mean, the worst offenders, I think, probably are people like the Metropolitan Police, who should be upholding the law, who admit that most of their records they haven't even catalogued going back to the 1930s. So it's a real mess, but no one seems concerned about FOI. No politician is going to vote for Christmas. It's like a turkey.
Why again? Like, what is it? Why would the police do it? Is it just out of carelessness, or are they going like, no, we need to protect the royals?
Well, it's not just royal stuff. There is a culture of secrecy. I think the fact is they don't know what they've got, so it's easy to say we haven't got it because they haven't done the cataloguing. I think there is just, clearly there's law enforcement elements. There are personal data elements which are very sensitive with the police. But I think they go way over the top. So, for example, I've got a case at the moment where I asked for a protection file for the Duke of Windsor from 1932, so it's almost 100 years old. And the Information Commissioner agreed with the Met that the release of this document would imperil the present safety of the royal family.
Oh, my God.
And so I took it to a tribunal, and that tribunal was last November, over a year ago, and they still haven't reported. It was a half-day tribunal. But their argument was that, and there's no evidence to support this, that terrorists might go into the National Archives, wade through a 500-page file, which is all about the subsistence allowance for detectives, and somehow find some element to kill the royal family. And this is from Prince Harry, who's given away, for example, the floor plan of Buckingham Palace in spare. Yeah. So the whole thing is just ridiculous. And all one can do is keep shouting about it in the hope that the public will pick up on this issue. Historians will begin to lobby Parliament, and parliamentarians, and there are many parliamentarians who write books and are historians, will come forward and do something about it.
Yeah. Do they have files on all of us? Have they got files on me? Have they got files on everyone who's spoken about the royals or high-standing members of Parliament?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the Cabinet Office, their files are based on what they call media monitoring. They want to just chart public opinion. And they certainly kept files on people, for example, who were critical of what was happening during COVID, anyone who's critical of the royal family. I'm a monarchist, but it doesn't mean that they should be given a free rein to behave as they wish above the law. You may have a file, I don't know. I mean, given the sort of people you talk to, possibly. I mean, MI5 clearly keep files. But the problem is we just don't know. I mean, I know I got some material from the Cabinet Office, but I know it's only a small fraction of what they could have provided. And quite often I do these subject access requests across different departments, and I get one side of a correspondence and not the other from one. So that there's a lot more out there that's revealed by some of the information you've already got.